Welcome everyone, and to our online viewers, greetings to Mrs O'Leary and others who may be watching or may watch later. A very busy day, as I've said, and for those in the chamber, you'll note that I've added a chocolate fish to your seats. That is atonement for my technology mishaps of recent times, where I've interrupted meetings with calls. So atonement in the most appropriate way, by way of a chocolate fish. Kia ora. So let's start our meeting in our traditional way also, with our karakia. So e noi tātou, tuia e runga, tuia e raro, tuia e roto, tuia e waho, tuia ne kaya mahi o te kaunihira o Kirikiriroa. Whaia te iti kahurangi, kia u, kia mau, kia ita. Haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Kia ora, thank you.
Do you need to vote on whether you're forgiven?
No. David asked if we needed a vote on forgiveness, but I'll take that as read. So our agenda today, let's look at the apologies. I've got a partial apology from Councillor Casey Cox, who I see online, but who might not make the whole of it, perhaps. From Councillor Donovan. Councillor McIndoe, you need to leave during the meeting. Thank you. And full absence from our Deputy Chair, Councillor Tuariki, who is in Tamaki Malkora for a tangi. And I'm happy to move that. Do I have a seconder? Mayor Paula. All those in favour? Thank you. All right, staff, if you can just adjust that, thank you. And so it's moved. And then now onto the confirmation of the agenda as it is written here. Do I have a mover? Councillor Hutt, and seconded Councillor Pike. All those in favour? Thank you. Declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest today? There being none, we do have a public forum, and we welcome regular to the meeting, Roger Stratford. Roger, please come and have a seat. It's, I understand that you'll be speaking to the item number 6, the Chair's report. And glad
yes, I will be, thank you.
Thank you. Glad that I've been able to spark some debate with you in this. Kia ora, the floor is yours. You know the rules. You have 5 minutes, and if you wanted to have any questions, then leave a little bit of time at the end. The floor is yours.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you very much once again, and nice to see you all again. A recurring theme has been a degree of uncertainty in the economic conditions. I think this is unwarranted. I'll just give an example of a economic development Chair's report where the American elections have been cited as a cause for uncertainty, where they've been held every 4 years for the past 250 years. There's no uncertainty in terms of moving forward, ensuring every bus lane, every bus stop in the city and in the suburbs is made in-lane. There's no uncertainty in combating climate change. There's no uncertainty in introducing congestion charges for vehicles in the city and in the suburbs just to prevent the boy races from, to catch the boy races out and make them pay. Second thing I'd like to talk about, although I have in the past in this forum spoken out against cost-benefit analysis, we do I understand you do some cost-benefit analysis, and I'm pleased with that. I just think that believe it should be made more vigorous and it should be made more visible so that we can itemise and see, the public can see exactly how the decisions are made when the staff make recommendations for expenditure, which decisions, of course, you make. I'd like to encourage the imposition of municipal tariffs. We have started that, you have started that, we have started that as a city with the Hamilton Gardens entry fee, and I wonder whether we could extend a similar fee to the Waikato Regional Theatre once it gets built completely and gets underway. I think it would be an excellent idea. People who come from Auckland and Wellington will want to come and see the Waikato Regional Theatre, and it would be great to just charge them a little bit extra. The third point, the proposed debt to revenue ratio increased to 350% by the Local Government Funding Agency. We believe as our Ratepayers Association that we're spending too much and debt is increasing too much, and every 3 years we're promised the books will be balanced. I think that we should resist applying for this council should resist applying for a 350% increase because for the reasons that I've indicated. There's a strong likelihood of overshooting the whatever limit is put into place. And in the past, as I understand it, even 22 decades ago, 20 years ago, it was as low as under 100% the debt to level ratio that was set. So I'm pleased to end my little talk there and wish to thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you, Roger. Do we have any questions from councillors from the floor? I don't see any. Thank you, Roger. Thanks for your participation today in our meeting. We always appreciate your comments. Kia ora. Thank you, meeting. We'll now go back to the agenda. And just before I start on the confirmation of the minutes, I just wanted us to be mindful of the other business that we have to get through today. There's some important things that we need to look at in our meeting, and happy to have questions and debate all the way through. We are aiming for an 11:30 finish, which in all times is speedy. So I guess if we can be mindful of that, please. Although, that will give us some time to have some lunch before our extraordinary council meeting begins at 12:30. There is a bit of leeway there. 45 minutes, I guess, is a minimum of time that we would want to allow staff to enjoy a lunch break, and for, of course, yourselves. However, if we don't get through the business, there's the likelihood that we could reconvene after the extraordinary council meeting. I'll be in your hands as to that. I guess that's not my preferred option. After a busy week, I guess it's not yours either. So let's see how our morning goes. And with that, let's now then have a look at the confirmation of the Finance and Monitoring Committee open minutes for the 7th of May. You'll find those on page 6, councillors. Are there any matters to be adjusted or anything that you would want to raise from those minutes? No? Do I have a mover? Councillor Wilson, and a seconder, Councillor Thompson. All those in favour? Aye. Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 6, page 10, the Chair's report. I believe I've said it in the report there. I really have nothing to add except that won't be the last of our General Manager David's meetings. There'll be one further in October before he moves on. And so we'll get the opportunity to appropriately recognise his contribution to the organisation at that time. And I have any questions? I see a couple on the board. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks, Chair Maxine. Interesting report that paints quite a gloomy picture. I've got a number of questions, which I'll actually leave to later on the agenda item under the financial performance. But first of all, I'd like to just get your take on the fact that it looks like we'll be breaching our debt to revenue in both this current financial year and the following 2 years, and whether you were aware of that when you were writing your report.
I think there was the distinct possibility of that happening, and that was the reason for the tone that you see in my report and the call for caution in my report.
Excellent. And in your report, you also note that the LGFA have signalled the ability for growth councils to go up to 350% once approved. In light of the fact that we're already breaching our current debt to revenue prior to making an application to increase, do you think that reduces our ability to actually access the 350 when we haven't been able to perform within our current debt to revenue ratios?
I guess there's some assumptions in there that both on the board approving those limit increases. I think absolutely it demonstrates the need for our consideration for a raised limit, and would want to be able to put that case at our earliest in order to be able to look for an outcome that suits both the city and the needs of Hamilton's growing future. I would caution also to say that in the past we've used a self-imposed limit to on the debt to revenue ratio to hold in the event that any catastrophic or other event comes up that we would need to respond to with significant financial power.
But in light of that, and I know you've had some experience in banking, if someone had already breached the pre-agreed debt to revenue and then walks in and asks for more money, more headroom, what would, and had breached the covenants, what would usually...
I guess that would be subject to the mitigants that go alongside of it, and I think Hamilton is a good case to put in there and could be seen in a more favourable light.
Further to your report, you speak a little bit about black swan events, and you've just repeated it again now, and the importance for having that headroom. In light of the fact that if you look at the graphs on page 58, both in this current financial year, 25-26, and 26-27, we are breaching our debt to revenue. We weren't doing that at the LTP. That's obviously a reflection of poorer performance than projected.
Just looking for those. Page 58.
Yeah, 58.
Yes.
Of course, we're breaching it, and we still don't have any headroom for a black swan event.
Councillor Wilson, I'll bring your attention to the fact that that's the the 21 to 31 long-term plan projections and debt to revenue projections, and that in fact with the reset of our 24-34 long-term plan, all of those matrix have been adjusted, and the picture that you see there is not what you might see now in the LTP that's printed and online for 24 to 34.
Okay, so
This is the year that's been in the LTP that has now been superseded by the current one.
so you're saying that we do not breach any of our, based on our up-to-date current financial position, you're saying that we do not breach our debt to revenue in any of the forecasted
While
years?
we'll get close to it, it's forecasted. There is no,
So can you,
not
so
in
we
this
get clo-
report, it isn't. But if you have a look on our website under LTP 24-34.
No, my question is, as Chair of Finance, I'm asking you, with the most current information that you have access to, are you saying that we will not breach any of our debt to revenue in any of the years over the LTP?
That's right. This has now been reset for the new LTP, and the first 3 years of it are close, but not breaching.
You talk a little bit in your Chair's report about the fear of a potential negative, well, we're already on a negative watch with our credit rating.
Yes?
Are you, in light of our current financial position, are you feeling that it's likely to occur, that there will be a further downgrade? And if so, is that the black swan event that you're sort of planning for? And are you of the opinion that we have sufficient headroom to manage that if that was to occur?
I don't have a crystal ball, but I understand that the Standard & Poor's organisation have looked at local government as a whole sector and have identified that there are risks for local government in their finances, and that there is the likelihood of a downgrade, not just for Hamilton, but for many other councils around the country. And that
to
Sorry,
Yeah.
Chair,
Yeah.
with all due respect, why are we being interrupted
I
in the middle?
think, Councillor Wilson, there's up-to-date information that's useful for the meeting to share, and if Mayor Paula has had a conversation with Standard & Poor, I think it's in the interest of the meeting to hear about those
So
conversations.
could you refer to me which standing order enables her to do that without having approval of the Chair, please?
No, I cannot, but perhaps, as the chair, I can allow an interruption from Mayor Paula.
So just
Thank
for
you. Yeah.
clarification, you'll extend the same right to anyone else in the chamber?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful. So thank you.
And it's the end of your questions, is it?
Yep.
Mayor Paula, did you want to let us know?
quick piece of information, and I was looking at David too, who's also been part of the same conversation. It's routine for Standard & Poor's to talk to governance and staff separately. So David's in receipt of the same information and conversation that I had. He may be able to add value to this conversation. But I was just going to make the point that I think you did touch on at the end, that Standard & Poor's have the majority of local government New Zealand on negative watch, but haven't made any adjustments to the credit ratings at this point in time. Of course, they have a critical interest in how we deal with the finances around water done well, which will make a huge impact on the risk that they see or otherwise coming forward. That's all I was going to say. And David, you can add.
Just to add to that, Standard & Poor's have released public information saying they have a growing concern of the local government sector's rising debt as a whole, and specifically because local government's revenues are not keeping in line with that debt. So we will find out early September the result of the assessment for Hamilton City Council, as a number of other councils will. There's a number of councils on negative watch, and I expect the whole sector to be challenged to retain, if you're in a growth situation with a lot of debt, to actually retain their current credit rating.
Thank you. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I'm wondering, would it be possible for the General Manager to just comment on the discussion that just occurred, because I'm just needing some further clarity in terms of this, these comments around breaching and then timing of this graph.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, no problem. So currently we are in the third year of the 2021-31 long-term plan. So it is practice for us to include the forecast for that LTP. We made a note right above that graph that mitigations have been made in the long-term plan, that is the 24-34 long-term plan. So if we kept our current trajectory at our 4.9% rate increase, we would have breached, and that was well canvassed through our LTP conversations, and it's one of the reasons why we have the rates increases that we do.
Okay, so the graph on page 58 is reflective of the last LTP, the third year of the last LTP, and the forecasts there are based on previous forecast rates increases.
That's right.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we have not, as of yet, we have not breached.
We have not breached, but if we continued on the trajectory,
Okay.
we would have.
All right, thank you. Okay.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I've just got another question on the credit rating. David, you said early September we're expecting to hear?
That's right.
Right. Can you just enlarge for me what would be the impact if our credit rating is downgraded? What would be the impact for us?
So the starting point is that New Zealand councils have a significantly high credit rating compared to other councils around the globe. So if we had a one-notch downgrade, which a negative watch last year signalled that if we didn't take drastic action to close the gap between revenue and debt and our expenses, that it's likely. So a one-notch downgrade isn't a significant financial burden, but it is a financial burden. So it would not impact any debt we currently have, but any future debt we raised, it would cost us a little more, 5 basis points. So if you take $1 million of borrowings, it would cost us an additional $5,000.
Right, okay. And when would that kick in?
For any time we borrowed future money once the credit
So
rating.
as soon as the credit rating is announced?
That's right.
Right, okay. And question for the Chair. Chair, you mentioned in your report the issues caused following our LTP, the lack of resilience in our financial plan, the debt revenue, lack of headroom, and of course the possibility of a credit rating downgrade. Does that, as Chair, make you now regret not supporting the $100 million staff cuts that were put up during the LTP?
I think those were well canvassed at the time, and my position hasn't changed.
So you don't regret it as Chair of Finance, opposing those staff cuts?
My position remains as it was at the time of the LTP decisions in the fullness of the whole of the discussion.
Thank you.
No other questions? I'll move that the Chair's report be accepted, and Councillor Hutt to second. Is there any debate? Councillor Wilson. I'll reserve my right of reply. Thank you.
Thank you. Just just want to give you the opportunity.
Of course.
First of all, can I thank you for your candour in your report? I found it refreshing. I like the fact that, as Chair of Finance, you are highlighting the situation we find ourselves in, and it is very concerning. I don't think that it is a surprise, and I think a lot of this was canvassed at the time of the LTP, and I think that's what clearly differentiated this chamber. There was a desire by some to take a more financially conservative and, in my opinion, more prudent approach to ensuring we had more headroom, and that we also turned our mind to right-sizing the organisation to make us future fit, and that we would not then likely breach or be subject to significant downgrading of our credit. And although that hasn't occurred, there is a high indication that it might. I'm also very mindful that it is very clear that our approach, or the government's approach, in terms of waka kotahi and the funding, is now getting even clearer. We were clear that they were likely to cut some of their funding for projects. That is now a reality. And so I find myself in this position of having to say, we told you that things were going to get tough. We tried to send a signal that it was time for a prudent approach to our financial position, that we needed to ensure we had sufficient headroom, and that needed to be multi-pronged. We needed a slightly higher rate increase to give us that additional headroom, and we needed to right-size the organisation. We've chosen to do neither, and the financial reality is beginning to bear down on us.
Thank you. And Mayor Paula.
Thank you, Chair Maxine. And thank you for a good report. I don't think we can use every single financial report every month to really indicate the long-term plan. It's a lot more complex than that. The uncertainties are out there, and I was privileged to be at an event hosted by Brad Olsen at Parliament last week, I think it was last week. And all of these uncertainties that you set out here, Chair, are exactly the certainties that the broader sector and even the business sector is facing, and it's tough out there. And we also, just on a note, did balance ratepayers' affordability, because, as Councillor Wilson noted, to make some different changes would have been a higher rates increase on the ratepayer at the time, and we know what ratepayers said about that. But in terms of this, and in terms of Standard & Poor's, this whole financial conundrum is far bigger than us. We are waiting for lots of things to move within the next month, including what happens to interest rates and what the Reserve Bank reaction to the market is accordingly. And that will make a huge difference in public confidence and ability to borrow or spend money. Yeah, it's tight times. We knew that. This was one of the toughest LTP we've been through. I think month by month we've got to be doing what we are doing, which is giving it a really forensic look for any changes. We always knew we were sailing tight to the wind, close to the wind is the saying, isn't it? Close to the wind. We were sailing close to the wind. And we know that, and that is why we're going into an LTP amendment over one of the critical sources of our financial woes, which is the Water's Done Well. And once we have a clearer certainty on how we fund Water's Done Well, the picture will start to write itself in a different way. Thank you.
And Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, while the financial issues are bigger than this council and are across the country, that doesn't take away the fact that we are in control of our own destiny. We can make decisions which impact on our own financial performance and how at risk we are putting ourselves. And the debt revenue headroom, NZTA not supporting projects and that impacting on us, the possibility of a credit rating downgrade, these should not come as a surprise. These issues were raised during the LTP debates. And so it should be no surprise. And to me, it seriously calls into question the wisdom of the decisions made during that LTP. If they'd come as a surprise and they'd come out of left field, okay, you live with that. But we knew these things when we made those decisions. And a group of councillors tried to get that across to the council leadership. And when push came to shove, despite signalling $100 million worth of cuts in the LTP, the draft LTP, we buckled. And this very sobering report is now showing the impact of that final decision. Thank you.
Thank you. And any other speakers on the matter? Fine, then I'll just wrap up with a few of my final comments. I hold that the decisions that we made at our LTP sets us up well to forge ahead into the unknown, really. There's the uncertainties that I've talked about and all of those that surround our Three Waters decisions in future months. Our LTP amendment will allow us an opportunity to make further adjustments once we know the outcomes of where we want to go with Three Waters. My report urges us to think about and to prioritise any future spending decisions that we're making in this context. And I ask us to really be mindful of that as we work through the rest of our program for the year and into next. I am especially pleased with the opportunity to be your chair and to help us to navigate through those times, and welcome Councillor Wilson's questions and Councillor Taylor's reflections on our past decisions. But I'm really very focused on what our future will look like and being in the very best place to respond. Kia ora. And so we'll go to the vote. All those in favour, raise your hand. And against?
The motion was passed unanimously.
Thank you. On that, we welcome Kieran into the support chair today as well. And so now moving on to item number 7, our capital portfolio monitoring report. And we welcome Ian and Kelly to the chair. Thank you. The floor is yours. Oh, before we start, can I just say how fabulous the attachment to your report is, and no doubt there'll be some comments in that on that as we work through your item. So the floor is yours, Ian.
Thanks, Chair Maxine. Good morning, councillors. Thank you. Today what we're going to do is we're going to present the financial report for the capital program for the end of the 23-24 financial year, and I think we've heard it before, but look, this represents the end of the 3-year cycle for the previous 21-31 LTP. To acknowledge that milestone, that 3-year milestone, look, we have produced our look-back document, which we've done over the last number of years now, and the difference this year is, for this year, is we've actually focused on the 3-year period looking back and not simply the 1 year looking back. I would like to do, and I've just cleared to the chair, I do want to just acknowledge, look, a lot of work goes into that document, and just a couple of staff members, and Anna Marie Harris in our PMO office, and Bryce Salt and our comms and engagement team who put a lot of really hard work into producing that document. So I think it's important that we just acknowledge their work. And it's just nice to be able to present something that doesn't focus purely on the dollars, but on the actual physical delivery. Apologies, not so much apology per se. Look, so at the moment it's an attachment against your agenda. We do have hard copies, and we will endeavour to get this distributed to you in the very, very near future. It might be later today, latest it should be tomorrow. So I'll just say that. If we look actually at the financial position or performance for the 23-24 year, look, we spent $336.8 million, and associated with that we had $55 million in capital revenue. That was pretty much on line with what we had been forecasting throughout the year, so that's quite pleasing. And if we look back at the last report back in May, which was on the March quarter, we were very close to the year-end projection we gave you, which is quite important when we're trying to balance financial strategy metrics and ensuring that we're in control. The capital WIP, which is our work in progress, look, 772.7 million. It is quite a large number, but again, I've said it before and I'll keep saying it, the number we really want to focus on is the WIP that's outstanding and not the actual total WIP. And that number's 157. That is actually very it's positively trending downwards. So I think that's really good. I think it's a reflection on a lot of the work that's been done over the last 12 to 18 months, and certainly the future fit changes are starting to really kick in there and add some power to that. I'd like to just focus on what I think is the positive story there, is that throughout the 23-24 financial year, the organisation actually capitalised 268.8 million, which is a significant amount of work that's gone through, because the reality is that it's quite a large, complex project process to take an asset from construction through to setting up and being reflected in the asset register. In case in point, as you'll see on the front of the look back document, we've got a great looking bridge that we're about to start the official opening ceremony tomorrow and so forth. And look, already I'll let you know that there's been a significant amount of work done behind the scenes from that accounting point of view to ensure that we are in the right place to start that capitalisation almost immediately, so that it does not sit on that outstanding list. So there is a lot of pre-work goes into that. Pleased to really say, I think I've said it before, but I think I can say it officially now, our housing infrastructure fund at 183 million is now fully drawn down, which again, great tie-in back to the bridge, because of course it was instrumental in affording and paying for that. So just to be clear, so that's fully drawn down now. It is an interest-free loan. The interest-free loan operates in such a way as each individual drawdown, there was 24 of them, each individual drawdown is an interest-free loan starting from the period that we received it from the government for 10 years thereafter, so that's great as well. I just wanted to probably finish on the portfolio risk, and I've heard the debate through the Chair's report and discussion, and just to reiterate and tie into that is that, look, we do know that we are a period of uncertainty. Our LTP even mentioned the reference to directly the impact of NZTA subsidy was not at the levels that we had anticipated through that. The Council would be required to come back and have a look at its capital program in particular to ensure that our spending was in line with financial strategy, and there was absolutely no risk of that. You'll see in the report I've said that that certainty hasn't actually crystallised yet, even though it's starting to look, we're starting to get a feel where we're going. So staff are actively working through the 24-25 year one LTP capital program in light of the deferral expectation as well, to ensure that that program is and remains within those parameters that have been set by the government or the LGFO at the moment. So what we're hoping is 15th of October, the next Finance Committee, we will bring back a full capital program for that financial year that will take into account some of that uncertainty, which hopefully by then will have crystallised, and we'll be able to give you, tell you exactly what's happening in that space. So look, at that point, I'll take the rest of the report as read, but Kelly's here and can give you any updates physically on any of the projects. Otherwise, I'm happy to take any questions.
Kelly, did you want to preface any of the discussion?
No,
No?
that's fine.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to the board then. Councillor Wilson.
Madam Chair, thank you for your report and your verbal update. I'd like just a little bit more reflection or insight into the NZTA funding challenge. Walk me through how staff is thinking that they would manage each of these projects. That are you to review them, see what the subsidy was projected to be, what it is going to, whether or not? Could you just walk me through that? How you intend to manage that process?
Oh, well, how we will manage it is obviously the revenue the NZTA gives to the council forms part of the debt to revenue, so it's revenue that helps deliver the entire council program, not simply the transportation area. So once we crystallise that and we understand what that revenue level may look like, that'll start to reset the parameters in terms of what the borrowing is. So then we'll go back and we'll have a look at that capital program, and we'll prioritise that to ensure that what we're doing is that that we are spending the right money on the right projects at the right time and ensuring. But of course that'll have to come back in the chamber and make you to present to you so you're aware of that, and to actually resolve what decisions we will make going forward.
Okay.
So in other words, it may be...
Let's expand on that last point. So you'll come back and we'll decide
Correct, 100%.
how we reallocate those funds
That's right.
Correct.
to each of the individual projects. Have you, the GPS is out, there's a lot of information out. Have you at least turned your mind to the sort of quantum that is likely to, in terms of revenue, that won't be coming in? First part. Second part, of course, anything from NZTA revenue is treated as revenue, and that enables us to borrow more.
Correct.
So there are two parts of this, isn't there? There is what projects can we no longer afford to do that we thought we were going to do, and the reduction of our debt capability. And that may also mean other projects that we thought we might like to do, we might not. Right. So they are significant changes. So can you tell me how we're going to be presented that information? Because it's two parts, right?
It is. Well, again, the first thing we need to know is crystallise exactly what that NZTA impact will be, because then that will set our new levels. And then once we have that, we'll have an envelope to work within. You know, the team, Kelly's team with Chris, will sort through that. We'll look at the priorities. You take into account a whole bunch of factors, from stuff we're consent to do, things that are currently under contract that we can't back out of, and come to you with basically a restated, in my view, capital program for the 24-25 financial year, holistically looking at the whole thing, and then you'll be able to understand, you know, because it may be, and I'm making this up on the spot, apologise, it may be that we have to defer a wastewater project at the expense of a transportation program, or vice versa, to ensure that that program meets the levels that we can now afford to do under that debt to revenue level that we're faced with.
Ian, if I can help you also, the NZTA revenue is one of a number of variables that we're going to have to review in the amended LTP in terms of assumptions. So if you take a look at the closing debt position, for example, of our June financial year, we were positive by about $80 million, as in we hadn't borrowed 80 million. That did relate to the deferrals that you're talking about, Councillor Ewan, rather than additional cash coming in. But those are decisions that need to be all put in the hopper and come back to elected members to say this is the current picture with the update of all current assumptions, and so we can provide you with some options.
Yep, thank you. Either maybe the General Manager or Chris, could either of you give me an indication, having now received the documentation you have, the funding envelope we're aware of, what sort of quantum reduction?
I'll pick that one up, Councillor. So it's a very tight ship from NZTA, so we don't have the information yet. Our staff are not telling that information because it's been held quite tightly through their processes. We are expecting it maybe this week, or certainly very early next week. We've had indications of our maintenance and renewal funding. That is probably down about $3 million per year than from what we expected. For the capital, just in general terms, our program for the first 2 years is assuming about $20 million of revenue.
Sorry, for just the first...
So if we got zero, it would be down 20 million.
So 20 million for the first two, 30 over the 10 for maintenance and renewals. Any indication on transport? You know, and roading? Or is that under, that's obviously under the capital, is it?
It's all in relation to roading.
Right.
It's just the maintenance and renewals.
Right.
One thing to note is that this funding is just for the next 3 years, and it might change, and it probably will change from years 4 to 10. So we'll have to exercise our minds on what assumptions we make from years 4 to 10. One of the issues they've got at the moment is just the high rate of commitments they've got and lack of funding to pay. Now, whether that would still be the same in 4 years or not, that is something we'll try and give you as best advice we can when we bring this back to you.
Right, thank you. So back to the General Manager, if I could. In light of now having an insight of those figures, and they're projected figures, and the assertion that we are currently, over the 10 years, not likely to breach our debt to revenue, how confident are we still that that would be the case if we see these revenue reductions from NZTA come through? And what are we going to mitigate those?
Well, I think we can't be confident until we get confirmation of what that revenue reduction is.
So sorry, just for clarity, so you're saying we can't be confident that we won't breach debt to revenue because of this uncertainty?
My answer, I could give you more of an exact number if I knew what the revenue reduction was going to be, but this council won't breach its debt to revenue because we'll have to take action to reduce our spending. When we look at the answer that was given before about projects and what we would defer, we would have to be very mindful of the revenue associated with some projects because they help us.
Right.
So again, when that revenue number is known and we understand all the other variables I talked about, like we have some upside in our interest costs, for example, they're falling quicker than the LTP, et cetera, et cetera. Through the amended LTP discussions with elected members, we'll be able to work that through with you. There's also, as we mentioned earlier, the opportunity of an increased debt to revenue ratio to 350, of which my advice wouldn't be to spend more on new things, but if we needed to build in some resilience but lift our debt to revenue, then that may be an opportunity that council might want to pursue.
Final question, and it's purely a procedural question, really. Once you've landed on this hard data, this sounds like we're going to need a sort of a mini review of the whole capital project, CapEx projects. Where will that occur? Does that occur at council or does it occur back in each of the committees? I'm just trying to understand.
No, I think in the construction of the amended LTP, as well as, don't forget, we have to do an annual plan. We will have to have a workshop with elected members with all that information, so we can disclose all that in a workshop environment so that we can get some steer on what decisions elected members would like to make.
Okay, but no projects will obviously start that had relied on Waka Kotahi funding until we have it.
There's significant caution in the team to not start anything new that we're not contractually bound to continue with.
So
until we understand the extent.
Does that mean we're not starting any new projects?
I have to defer to
Yeah,
Chris.
if I answer that, we're on a very deliberate slowdown, almost virtually stopped until we get this information on new transportation projects. We do have some still travelling through the process, even some surf projects, which is still funded, but we're not winding up another big program of transport projects until we know the funding situation and until elected members have had their view on what we should be doing. You know, the options will be you could carry on with local share, but I'm not picking that that's what you want to do. So, yeah, so we're anticipating that it is going to be a significant issue. So I just want to be clear. I think it's emerging just from the language we're hearing and the news around the country. It is going to be a significant issue, but we are preparing for that. The way we've always said through all of the reports in the LTP is we will rearrange our capital program to manage the impacts of that loss of revenue. So we would be coming to you with options of how we do that. I think some of the more significant impacts might be in year 2 or 3, which gives that annual plan opportunity and the LTP amendment to fix that. So for me, it's this financial year and what is our what are our metrics at the end of this financial year. So we are going to have to make some decisions, I suspect, this financial year to slow down some projects. But we're working on that, ready for a discussion with councillors.
Thank you. The board's well lit up. But before I go to our next speaker, while we just talk about Waka Kotahi funding, Chris, it's not unusual for Waka Kotahi funding to be contested, for it to be unknown what our portion of that will be every 3 years. What makes it especially different this time?
Yeah, Madam Chair, you are correct that it's normal not to have confirmation of NZTA funding to about this time of the year. What makes it different is the change in the GPS, the government policy statement on land transport, and being able to predict 3 months ago where that might take all the funding prioritisation decision making in Waka Kotahi. So there's been a really clear shift in transport policy, as we've all seen. That's what's making it extremely difficult this time, is just to judge what you are likely to get from NZTA because of that shift in policy.
Okay. And you're confident that the projects that we've put up for co-funding will stand up to that new set of criteria?
They stand up to the criteria, but the big issue always with Waka Kotahi, they can say, yep, it's a good project, but sorry, we've got no funding. And that seems to be the situation now with a lot of the commitments they've got, that even the good projects, there might not be funding to fund them. That's always been the case, but I think that'll be more pronounced this year. But also we've still got that issue of projects that we've developed and think are good projects don't quite fit with the new GPS and the government's view on what they think is good. So we've still got an element of that in there as well.
Thank you. Now to the board, Councillor Bidder.
Ian, the HIF interest-free loan, interest-free for 10 years, what's the interest rate after the 10 years?
Well, once those interest-free periods end, then the debt just converts to interest-bearing debt, and then we just go into our normal borrowing mechanisms that the finance team will do, and whatever the interest rate is applicable at that time.
Right. Yep, thank you.
Mayor Southgate.
Should probably remember exactly why, but I just want to talk about paragraph 50, because I was reading that and it's highlighting that the HIF interest-free loan, the requirement to account for the interest-free benefit on the operating statement, and then the compounding effect that interest rates are high right now. What does that do to our overall balance in the budget? Nothing. We note it, but it doesn't. But it is.
Yeah, it's an accounting requirement. It's probably more with Sarah or David, but it's just a requirement. It impacts on your accounting result, but not your balance in the book result. So it's just acknowledging that the interest-free benefit will move depending on what the relevant interest rates of the day are, and the accounting standard requires us to quantify that and to put it through what we call the operating of the P&L statement.
All right, but it doesn't reflect on the overall.
I think it's also important to remember that the interest rate starts from each drawdown to 10 years.
Yeah, and I'm interested actually in terms of government partnership with us, what the accrued benefit of that interest being free would have actually been. I can't remember having seen it in a report, but I'd just be interested in that, because we got a loan instead of a grant, and the loan was interest-free, and going forward, what have we gained from that?
Look, I mean,
don't have to do it now.
Yeah, I know, but it's dynamic because the interest rate changes all the time. I think we did a piece of work recently, maybe in the last 12 months, using interest rates as we expect them to be, and I think the benefit was accruing at about 70 million. That was the benefit of the interest-free period, the 180 over that 10-year period of interest-free. So it was not an insignificant sum. But again, interest rates the way they've been moving over the last couple of years in particular do have the ability for it to move quite dramatically.
Yeah, I
That's
know we
the
won't
only-
know till the final, but even that figure is quite interesting. Thank you
Yeah,
for it.
that,
And we
that
can-
would be at its highest benefit, given that interest rates are now falling.
Yeah, I have one other highlight. Social procurement opportunities across our portfolio in paragraph 61, which involves recognition and valuing social benefits through the selection of contractors. Where or how will that come back to us? What progress or savings? Because we have dedicated a 10% drop to contractors, but within the contracts and the procurement themselves, when will we know whether our efforts are bearing fruit in terms of sharper costs from contractors, better partnerships, those kind of things? So, and all there again, if you can't
I don't
deal
have the
with it
information in
today,
front of me.
can we know when?
Southgate, we can make a note and.
Yeah, that would be really good. Through you, Madam Chair, if I'm happy for the question to be answered afterwards, but the procurement space is a space I know you've been passionately leading, but I would love to understand how we're going with it and what positive differences it has or can make to the organisation. I'll leave it with you. Thank you.
I'll make a note of that, and also look to be able to bring that up through outside of this committee, other informal sessions that we have as councillors on the topic of finance, which we can bring that point into. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Paula. Oh, one more?
Sorry, one more. Looking at that excellent capital portfolio report, it's excellent every year. I just wish every Hamiltonian would spend 10 minutes over a coffee to read it and see how money is really spent. How much of the proportion of this year's capital, or the period this report covers, was water, do you know?
I'd love to, off the top of my head, hang on.
Sorry, and David's not here, so I can't.
One moment, please, Colin. Actually, no, I don't.
Come back.
Sorry, I don't. Not that I want to send you off to get a calculator. Attachment 3 is the capital expenditure program
Yeah.
for the whole thing. It does have the actual spend that aligns with the total spend for the year. And if you were to go and look at the water wastewater storm, you could add
I'd
it
rather
up.
you did it and supplied it to
Oh,
us if you would.
And that would be my pleasure to do that. Thank you.
And
Yeah.
because, yeah, I would, if I can ask a further question, could I have the water and the growth roading? Just kind of, I'd like to understand where they sit in terms of.
As a percentage.
Yes,
Yeah,
because.
yeah, believe it or not, very
I have some
simple.
reasons.
We'll do that
Oh,
imminently for you.
perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question for Chris, because I was listening with interest around the NZTA subsidy discussion, but I didn't fully catch the comments in terms of maintenance renewals budget. I heard, so Chris, can you confirm, are we looking at receiving less than expected in terms of maintenance and renewals subsidy?
Yes, so they are quite ring-fenced, our maintenance and renewals budgets. So if they give you money for pothole repairs, you've got to spend it on that. So there's a lot stricter guidelines what you can spend the money on. Whereas before it was a bit more of an allocation of funding that we could use. So what appears the area that's been hit hard is renewal of footpaths. So that's the area that they are not meeting our sort of subsidy expectations in the renewal of footpaths. So that's quite a challenging issue to deal with. So we're just waiting to get all of the rest of the capital, put it all together and come back to council. But that's the indications we've had at the moment. So we're down on the revenue that we expected for our whole maintenance and renewals program in the area of footpaths renewal.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So when this current government made a big thing about putting more money into maintenance and renewals of our roading infrastructure, was the money extra money, or was it just taken from other parts of the program like footpaths?
Yeah, I probably can't answer that one, but they've certainly put more money and targeted at particular areas, and clearly pothole prevention is an area that they've is strong in the GPS, and ring fencing councils to spend it on our, our carriageway maintenance and renewals and surfacing and drainage.
Thanks, Chris. So are we able to get so do you have an exact amount in terms of the amount that we received last funding round for the renewals and maintenance of our footpaths? Do you have a comparison?
Yep, we'll be bringing all that to you. We're just working through that at the moment.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Chair, I do have another question for David. Just can I please confirm, you mentioned that we can bring adjustments to the capital program to the LTP amendment, but if we're needing to make adjustments in light of NZTA subsidies in this financial year, what does that process look like? Is it that the transport projects go to infrastructure and transport, but other variations to the capital program come through this committee?
That would be the best route. I wouldn't want to be talking too much on behalf of Blair. He'd probably poke me in the eye with a sharp stick because he's got a process with regard to the annual plan. But he's going to. We have next Wednesday. We have a briefing on the whole process, so we can discuss it fully next Wednesday. But in between times, this would be the appropriate committee.
Yes. Okay. Thank you.
For the non-transport. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Pike.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the HIF drawdowns in paragraph 49 and how the repayments are reliant on DCs. Given the strong feedback we received in the LTP on how challenging DCs are and the general outlook for developers, how confident are we of the projected revenue of the 7,400 houses in the next 30 years?
Probably a little bit outside my area. What I can say is we reported last year on this very issue around our confidence about with the projection of the growth we were expecting in Peacocks and our ability to get the revenue to repay the HIF. At that stage, it was still within the business case that we signed off originally and approved in, and there was no reason to think that we weren't going to get those revenue streams coming in. If that was to change, then again, that would change the environment. Okay. But right now, there's nothing to suggest we have an issue there.
Mm.
If I can help too, we did bring a report to an earlier committee of where we said that we were on track with our DCs, and Greg Carstens monitors exactly the topic that you're talking about.
Okay. If we weren't to receive the full level of DCs, what impact would this have on our debt to revenue, and what options would we have to respond to this?
I mean, David might want to jump in, but I mean, the simple reality is that if the DC revenue was to drop, it would be would be unfavourable on the bottom line, and it would therefore mean that we would have to we wouldn't be getting that revenue coming in to service that debt, so we'd have to service that debt through other revenue streams.
Thank you.
Any other questions, colleagues? Oh, beg your pardon. Councillor Nader Rolfe.
Thank you. Most of my questions have been answered apart from, I think, two. The NZTA subsidy conversation, just one small question, and I just can't remember. When they release their budget, what's the start date for it?
So what the NZTA do, they release what they call a National Land Transport Program, and that lines up with our LTP, so it's 1 July 24 through to 30th June 27, so it's the same as our 3-year period.
So why would we be looking at our current year?
Well, we're in 24-27 now, so we're in year 1 of the LTP, and their funding will be from year 1 starting July a couple of months ago,
Okay, thank you. That's better to, easier to understand. And the other question was the drawdown, the HIF loan drawdowns. I understand, how it works, but can you remind me when our first drawdown was? Are we close to 10 years or?
Oh, no, I think, no, I don't like guessing in this environment, but no, we do have a full schedule, and I think it was published last year to the committee, but I can certainly recirculate that.
I guess it was about 4 years ago when we started.
Yeah, I wanted to say 2018, but I could be wrong, because it was some, but the first drawdown from memory was, I do know this number, it was about 287,000. So it was, because I watched them slowly and surely get bigger and bigger and bigger as the physical works took off. But I can circulate that to you.
All good, thank you. And quickly, I did see, love the report, by the way. Chris, the Horsham Downs Borman project, is that on schedule? It's mentioned at a finish date of Feb 25,
Yeah, it's going really well at the moment. I think the contracted schedule date's early in the new year, but everything's going really well on site, so hopefully we can better that. But, from my understanding, and Kelly's been out there, probably directed to her, she's been out to have a look on site.
Okay, cool.
And weather dependent.
Yeah. Awesome, thank you. Yeah, that's what I thought, so I was just...
We never like to say ahead of schedule because then,
It looks
then the
ahead of
weather
schedule.
comes, as Kelly said, and we're behind schedule. So.
Okay, I'm mindful that we're getting a bit stretched for time here. Councillor Wilson, I see your name pop back up again. Is that a new line?
Because of some information Ian and David gave, in response to the development contributions funding HIF, the HIF loans. I look on page 52 of the report and it says that we've had an unfavourable development contribution, so it's less than we had projected. Have I misread that? On 7, page 52, 7 capital revenue, and it highlights there's actually been a slowing down of development contributions, and in this particular period by 4.7 million. Yeah, and I'm just, it seems to be in contrary to both what the GM said and what Sean said, was that there doesn't seem to be a slowdown on development contributions.
That's, I think,
relating my
particularly relating to the... Oh, sorry, David.
Sorry, to the HIF loan portion, but overall you're right, there is a slowdown in the sense that we are under budget by $4.7 million DCs. You're correct, from a holistic development receipt and budgeted perspective. Yeah.
Okay, so that, because momentarily I thought everything was fine, but then I remembered actually no. Development contributions
we're almost $5 million down
slow.
of our budget number.
Thank you.
Noting that it fluctuates.
Yes.
Thank you. Right. Councillor Nadia Roth, did you have No? Okay. Thank you. Thanks for your... one small question from me. You talked about having a hard copy for councillors, potentially. Great. I wondered if you had an intention of getting those out into libraries or community houses for public to access.
They're accessible on the website, but physical copies, I don't think that may be defined as a nice to have.
Okay. Okay.
We're looking at all costs at the moment, and any way we can, we're trying to optimise them. So it's available on the website.
Of course. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for your report. Now let's take us back to the staff recommendation on page 51. I beg your pardon, 13. I'm in the wrong report. I'm happy to move that. Do I have the seconder? Councillor Hutt. Let me start the debate. Look, it's really easy to be overtly concerned about the negatives that we see in the report, and whilst valid there are plans that I hear through this meeting to be able to deal with those, to be able to make adjustments and act accordingly so that we aren't in a worse position. But that those things shouldn't be done until we have the full knowledge about what the impact might be. Only then can we make plans on how to respond. I'd like us to focus also on some of the positive stuff that sits in here, and certainly the Look Back report is an outstander, something that covers the whole 3 years of our program, $303 million worth of capital programs that we've delivered over that 3-year period, and it really shows a step change in the program that we've seen over the years and on our deliverability, and it really reflects the council's response to the growth and looking after what we've got. And the whole team can be really proud of that, all of that work. I'm particularly pleased to see that document produced and be available to everyone. It's a shame that we can't put it into all of our libraries and spaces where we might connect with the public, because that's what would make it accessible for everyone to see our successes. But I completely understand the dynamics around it. I just look in my own neighbourhood and see the success of projects that are delivered. I'm waiting for the lights to go on, the pedestrian lights to go on at the roundabout at Grey and Naylor. Oh, brilliant. And then for those road cones to be disappearing. Thank you for that. And look, I'm really pleased with that work. Kia ora. And next on the board, Mayor Southgate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the report. We all know the financial situation's unstable. It doesn't matter if I'm listening to bankers as I was last night from Kiwi Bank, or I'm with Brad Olsen or Cameron Baggery or whomever else. You know, we're going through a tough and unstable time, and that's unsettling. Times are tight. We have some green shoots, they tell us. Green shoots, and I love that word, that with interest rates and some other things softening. But affordability is key. But, you know, when I look at this capital portfolio report, and I love when it comes out every time, you can see without a shadow of doubt, and which is why I asked for the assessment, where our money is spent is on capital projects of large scale, not small, localised, nice-to-haves at all, but massive capital projects. And I'm just looking at one page, and if I look at citywide waters, why I've chosen waters is because waters is the biggest challenge that we face in the next 8 months. We spent $124.7 million on citywide waters and attracted 32 million externally. But that isn't nice to have. That was Puketi wastewater plant. And we know that we had some issues with both capacity and compliance. We need at a demand management pump station in Newcastle Road. It's not the sort of thing that people are talking about over the dinner table, I tell you that. But it's important, the Collin Roads waste water storage, to make sure that all of that is properties and all of that land, the properties don't flood and the land can be used. And the award-winning Waiora water treatment plant upgrade to our one wastewater plant, which is Puketi. Our one place where all wastewater for Hamiltonians go is Puketi. And if it isn't top-notch, where are we at? So I'm just making the point that when we get all excited, and generally there is a little bit of public interest in the basics, these are as basic council core work as you get. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Paula. Councillor Bitter.
Thank you, Chair Maxine. And thank you for a couple of great questions from my colleagues, Councillors Pike and Wilson, concerning links between HIFs and DCs. The interest-free loan for 10 years, we heard that the compounding effect of that was saving about $70 million, which is fantastic. DC's dropping by 4.7 million below budget. Repeat that over 10 years and that compounds to about $70 million. So we're losing all the benefits of the HIF by the DC problem that we have in front of us. This is why there is a need to be overtly concerned. Headroom is essential, and I'm not talking about 280% caps or 350% caps. I'm talking about what our citizens can afford. In our LTP, there is no intention to repay debt in the next 10 years. In fact, debt is increasing from 1 billion to 2.5 billion. Please be more cautious. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Maxine. I think it's okay to look back and to celebrate occasionally some of the things we are doing and doing well. But I would make the observation our ratepayers should simply expect that. They should expect us to invest in the critical core things that councils should do. And we have been good in Hamilton in investing in water, and that's shown when you analyse us compared to a number of other councils in the amount of money we've invested in our water treatment and potable water and storm water. So we should celebrate that. But we should make it a very brief celebration, because in the broader context, we're in trouble. We're better off than some, but we're still in trouble. And we keep trying to justify the fact that we're in trouble by saying, oh, it's all so uncertain. But we knew when the government changed, and governments changed, it's called a democracy, that they would have a different priority. But despite that, we went out in our LTP with a very upbeat, road-centric strategy. And now we shouldn't be at all surprised when we're discovering there are tens of millions of dollars of the funding that isn't coming. And the perversity of the business we're in, unlike any other business, we treat a revenue from Waka Kotahi as revenue. And then we leverage that on our borrowing. So we get a double whammy. Not only are we not getting funding, but we've already spent money based on borrowings we can't then do. And I think we also have to be mindful that our development contributions are slowing down, and it's not just 1 month, it's been a number of months in a row. We need to be more cautious. We're sailing into a very strong headwind.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, we are in a challenging situation. We are not going to breach our debt to revenue covenants, however. It was made clear when we made the decisions in the LTP that we may need to come back through this committee and through the infrastructure committee to readjust the capital program in light of what comes through NZTA decisions. We were aware of that. It was noted in resolutions. This is not a surprise. And this is the point of this committee, to enable us to make adjustments. And what I'm hearing is that staff are very aware of the need to be very careful in committing any further projects before we have a very clear picture ahead of us in terms of NZTA subsidies. I want to speak very briefly on footpaths. I think this government has made a big thing about maintenance and renewals and trumpeted its pothole prevention fund. But at the same time, it sounds like it may be happy to leave our footpaths crumbling and disintegrating at the same time. This is an absolute double standard in my view. Residents have expressed huge frustration in terms of, around the state of our footpaths. In 2018, this council, I know because Dave Mack talked a whole lot about it when he was campaigning, put a lot of focus on increasing the amount of investment in renewing footpaths to get them up to standard. We've been working hard on that, and now it sounds like it's at risk. So I think that once we have absolute clarity around the numbers, this council needs to speak out loudly about that, because this will be an issue that will actually have a real impact on residents, creating tripping hazards, hazards for people with mobility devices. And this is actually about looking after what we've got. And we can't take from one fund, then fund another and say we've got, new money for potholes. So we need absolute clarity of what's happened there in terms of our funding for this. Thank you.
Any further remarks? Online, we have Councillor Anna Casey-Cox.
Thank you. Just quickly, thank you to the staff for the report. It's really comprehensive, and I really enjoyed the different information in there, including that we have the most rolled ice creams, tip-top rolled ice creams in New Zealand at Hamilton Gardens. So I thought that was just the kind of information in there is really interesting, and I share Councillor Maxine's hope that the community will be able to see all of this great work. We are, as the questions have illustrated, vulnerable to the whims of central government and what they're prioritising, and I think, they've kind of put us under a bus, or the Prime Minister did recently, and now they're tripping us up on our own footpaths as well. So it's not getting any better. But we are in challenging times, and I know that our staff are really on the ball in terms of that. And I'm so pleased that David's got a hopper that we can chuck all these numbers into. And we have such a great finance team to support us in this work. So thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. I won't exercise my right of reply. We are pushing up on time, and so let's go straight to the vote. You'll see that it is simply to receive the report. So I've moved and Councillor Hutt seconded. All those in favour? Aye. And against?
The motion was passed unanimously.
Thank you.
Chair, can I just correct something I said before? I did my quick analysis, but the actual $1 million borrowings is $500 additional cost, not $5,000.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Now we're going to go to item number 8, our financial performance and strategy report, and we're welcoming Sarah to the chair. The first time that she's been asked to take on this task, as you'll recall. Our previous finance director, Tracy, has moved on to Wise Group. We wish her well, and we welcome Sarah and offer all of our support for your first report. So the floor is yours, Sarah.
Thank you.
And know that you've got David sitting here next to me and others in the room to assist.
Thank you. Tēnā koutou katoa, ko Sarah Vaz aho. So I'm the accounting manager. I'm here to present the year-end result for the year ended 30 June 2024. So please note that these are draft results. So the work to complete the annual report is still ongoing, and Audit New Zealand will be conducting their audit over the numbers during September, October, with the final report due to be approved by Council on Thursday, the 31st of October. Specifically, the land revaluation is not yet completed and booked and included in these numbers. The 2023-24 financial year has been challenging, to say the least. When capital spend in a year is equal to 75% of operational spend, and it has been up around that level for a few years, it is not surprising that the most significant impacts to the result are directly related to our asset and debt values and are directly affected by the market factors of inflation and interest rates. The balancing the books result, which is reflective of everyday operational spending, is a deficit of 35 million against a budget of 14 million and a forecast of a $40 million deficit, as noted in the late attachment. The largest variance to budget relates to $24 million of depreciation and interest costs. Depreciation increases are mostly a result of the inflationary increases to transport and park asset revaluations that were finalised in last year's annual reports after the annual plan budgets had been set. Interest cost increases were a result of a 4.68% average interest rate compared to a budgeted 3.21 interest rate. With 855 million of floating debt, a 1% difference in interest costs amounts to an annual increase of $8.5 million in interest. We also note that due to the uncertainties with regard to Water's debt and DIA direction on related debt instruments, our interest hedging strategies were somewhat restricted in an unfortunate period in the market. On a positive note, with Council now in control of any water entity transaction, we are now looking at a downwards swap curve in an aggressive market that we are in prime position to take advantage of, and which we are expecting to make a positive difference in the current year. We had a strong operating revenue result, exceeding budget by 22 million. This mostly related to additional interest revenue of $11 million earned through our term deposits, which are held at rates above our borrowing costs, which helps manage our net interest costs. $5 million NZTA operating subsidy, which supported an extended maintenance program, reflected in additional operating and maintenance costs. 1.3 million of event revenue generated through strong activity at Claudelands and FMG Stadium, and which offset the delayed Hamilton Gardens fee implementation. We are starting to see the revenue impact of changes to parking areas and enforcement using the licence recognition vehicles. However, that brings additional challenge in costs and collections. Consents continue to be lower than budgeted with reduced market activity. The additional 1.8 million of Wasteman levy is recognised as revenue upon receipt. However, it must be ring-fenced for specific future program expenditure through the reserves. 12.5 million of one-off Better Off funding was used to enable path connections, native planting and interpretive signage at Donny Park, Kukataruhi Gully, and supported weed and pest control and community planting events. It provided additional staffing for City Safe program at key sites, helped develop and implement a corporate sustainability and climate change program, and funded 1.7 million of community grants. A further 2 million of Better Off funding will fund projects to be completed in 24-25. Of that, 1.3 million has been earmarked to fund the work required to meet the government's water reform requirements, with the remaining funding the online portal and open data work. Over 170 million of operating expenditure is spent doing the basics, providing quality drinking water to our residents, treating wastewater and maintaining our road and footpath networks, and maintaining our parks and reserves and providing planning and consenting services. We also spent 74 million on making our city a thriving and fun place to be, providing aquatic facilities, libraries, events and destinations like the zoo and gardens. Overall, direct operational budgets, excluding depreciation and interest, were on target, including achieving the required 8.5 million of CE efficiency savings. Future Fit saw $2 million of redundancy costs and a reduction of just under 100 FTE roles. The impact of those staff reductions will be seen in reduced annual personnel costs from year one of the LTP. Water reform costs continue to mount, with $760,000 spent in the last financial year, utilising most of the remaining water stimulus funding as their council assimilates the change of direction from the new government and continues to engage with relevant government agencies. $268 million of capitalisations were achieved this year. Review of expenses at the point of capitalisation always results in the refinement of the classifications of expenses as operational or capital. This is where the project budgets are met, but due to the requirements of accounting standards, some expenses may be required to be expensed to the P&L rather than being capitalised. This resulted in 1.9 million of WIP adjustments. $2 million of projects were written off as part of LTP decisions to not proceed with specific projects. Discontinued SURF projects amounted to 2.6 million, and decisions from the Infrastructure and Transport Committee in March amounted to $1 million of write-offs. The accounting result is a surplus of 24 million against a budget of 118 million. Key impacts causing variances, including the following non-cash accounting adjustments. The landfill provision, 7 mil. This is a direct result of the increased planned spend that was agreed through the LTP. The accounting methodology requires us to recognise this movement as an expense in the current year, and it will unwind favourably against the actual expenditure in future years. The capital grant of $34 million with the vesting of Wairere Cobham to Waka Kotahi. This project was funded by around 75 to 80% of Waka Kotahi subsidy, and the vesting means that ongoing maintenance expenditure should be covered by Waka Kotahi. This was a change of accounting or treatment that you would have seen come through the late adjustment to your papers. Moving it from a loss on sale to a capital grant, which is in keeping with the recommended accounting treatment at the conception of the project back in 2018. However, the accounting treatment remains to be confirmed with Audit New Zealand. The remaining $5 million loss on disposal relates to a range of assets, from water assets to playgrounds, vehicles, lifts and intangibles. These losses on disposal occur when we don't use the assets for as long as we thought we would, bearing in mind that lives for assets are our best estimate. On the other side of the coin, there are assets that we use for longer than the useful life, where we never see the additional use reflected in our P&L as a gain. An example of these types of losses might be that 50 years ago we put in a pipe that theoretically, according to IRD generic rates, has a 70-year physical life. However, there may have been significant infill and development in that area causing capacity issues, and as part of a road upgrade, it makes sense to put in a larger pipe. But it will mean the write-off of the last 20 years of depreciation for that pipe. So this type of loss happens for a range of reasons, and work continues to improve the way that this is being incorporated into renewals, planning and business cases and understanding of growth. Investment property revaluation resulted in a $1.8 million reduction in value against a budgeted $2.8 million gain. This is due to market conditions. And like your house valuation is only really important against what you paid for it originally or if you're wanting to sell. The land revaluation I spoke of earlier is not yet included in these results, but will be included in the final audited accounts. This is likely to be a non-cash gain of $48 million. Our closing debt position was slightly more favourable than forecast at $924 million compared to the $1 billion forecast, but is a reflection of capital program deferrals rather than an improved operating cash position. The just completed year-end funding impact statements for the annual report show a $48 million cash operating surplus. But with depreciation of $108 million, it shows we have a $60 million operating cash shortfall in funding of long-term renewals, which also affects the availability of any cash surplus to fund debt repayment. When you look at the year's result, I would sum it up in that we had a controlled operational budget, but that we are feeling the impacts of an ongoing significant capital program funded by debt, including its impact on operational expenses. Insufficient cash surpluses over recent years to provide for renewals as well as original debt repayment are compounding debt and debt costs at the same time as we face a need for a large investment in growth infrastructure. It is important with higher debt to revenue options on the horizon that we understand our debt repayment profile and plan to ensure that debt is repaid over the appropriate time period, enabling future financial resilience. Benefits gained through government deals such as the interest-free HIF loan, which had a $26 million benefit for the loans drawn down this year, are of significant value to ratepayers. Finally, in reviewing the annual report, when it is provided to the Strategic Risk and Assurance Committee in October, I encourage you to look beyond balancing the books. Whilst it is a useful tool for specific purposes, review of the other financial statements will help provide a holistic view of the Council's financial performance and position. Kia ora koutou. I'm happy to take questions.
Fantastic, fulsome report. Thank you, Sarah. I'm going to go to the board and see Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Hi, Sarah. Thank you for that very detailed summary. I only have one question. When we start an LTP, well, 1st of July, it's based on a series of projections of how we would end the financial year. Can you tell me whether or not the projections we used and if there are any significant variants or variations from what we used to start our LTP? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. No, there's no significant variations. We are slightly favourable in where we think the annual report has landed us, and then once we go forward into our LTP, we're actually sitting slightly, ever so slightly, more favourable than we were for the LTP.
Okay, thank you.
And I don't see any further questions. No further questions from the floor, councillors? Thank you, Sarah. Excellent report and presentation today. So you've nailed it, I think.
You did great. Well done.
Perfect. If it would be appropriate to clap, we could, but let's not do that. And we are looking at the staff recommendation on page 51, councillors. Although it's likely to be the updated version, isn't it, David, on
Yes,
page 82, councillors. And so that includes the approvals from the capital movement as identified in the 29th of August Capital Portfolio Monitoring Report, and it notes that the revised financial strategy position for debt and to revenue, net debt and balancing the books set out in paragraph 55 to 53 of the staff report. I'm happy to move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Thompson. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wilson, just a tad shy. Thank you, Sarah. Great to be able to see you in our meeting today and see that you're getting some growth in your work and being able to present to us in such a competent way. We look forward to seeing you back in October, if that's the process that needs to happen. The results that you've presented today align with our expectations of what the year was. And it absolutely shows the challenges that we've had and the opportunities also that have come up through that time. These figures reflect the pressures, of course, that we've been managing, and including the high inflation, the high interest rates, and the increased depreciation costs over those past year. And while the audit process is still ongoing, my anticipation is that the final numbers will closely mirror that which has been presented and that we've seen today. Look, as we've discussed, they represent the outcomes for the year, but we're also facing those uncertainties that we know that we'll take into our long-term plan future years. Good to know that the assumptions made at the outset of that process haven't been materially changed because of any changes in these reports today. And thank you for your question on that, Councillor Wilson. As I outlined in my chair's report, these challenges have necessitated adjustments that we've made through that long-term plan process, and that we will continue to monitor and assess into our coming adjustment in the LTP. And I see that that's already in our diary for early discussion. So we no sooner finish one and we start on the next. It's it's the treadmill that we're in. Thank you, staff, for the significant work, though, that has gone into getting all of this prepared for us today and ensuring that we've got really clear and accurate picture of our financial standing. A special shout out to Tracy, actually, who isn't here today, but has been at the helm of the ship for the majority of the year. We send good wishes as you hold the fort in the WISE Group offices. Kia ora and thank you. Any other speakers? Councillor Thompson.
I just wanted to say thank you for the report and for the excellent presentation. I really found the presentation of value, so thank you. Yep.
Well, let's put that to the vote. All those in favour? Aye. Against?
The motion was passed unanimously.
Thank you. And finally, for the open process, we'll move into public excluded. Do I have a moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Pike? All those in favour? Aye. Now, team, can we take a 5-minute rest stop and then allowing staff to get us into the position of public exclusion?